one of the fun things about doing the podcast every single week is always filtering out what we don't want to talk about, but at the same time realizing how much there always is to talk about. So, for behind the scenes purposes, to let people know, we figure out our agenda pretty much an hour before the stream, and that's about it. And then everything else is off the cuff, because that's what a podcast, should be. It's off the cuff. I just prefer that. I think it's more comfortable for us. But do you want to give it a shot, considering we're just kind of making this up as we go, as we've discussed?
I'm good, man.
All right, then let's figure it out. Let's do this live. We have a live studio audience, even though they're not in the studio, but we are, as we say. Welcome on in, folks, to the Snap Back podcast, where you snap and we snap back. For those who do not know, my name is Guest, also known as ItsGuestGaming, and I am once again joined by Mr. Default Dan, aka Britt. Hello, good sir. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good. Just excited with all the stuff happening in Snap. This month, next month. I mean, just a bunch going on. I'll throw it out here before we jump into it, because it's not one of our topics yet. Congrats. So if you guys know, SnapCon is next month. The big get together, the first real in-person convention. Essentially, we've had Creator Clash, the first US based one. We had the one over in the UK. We've also had another tournament that was set up by another tournament person. I don't know that person by name, but they did another big one over in Switzerland. I don't know if you remember who that was based around, but those have really been the only get-togethers, in-person type events for Snap. And so we got SnapCon, a little different than that. We are having a tournament. We did announce the tournament yesterday. That's out there. So if you want to find all that information, definitely check it out. I believe it's snapcon2023.com to go there to check out the information. But what I'm getting to is the Marvel Snap Awards. So we are doing the first award show, and this is kind of being put on by the Jolly Roger, getting everything together. He reached out to get nominations from tons of people in the community, a lot of, prevalent content creators, things like that, to get our nominations of the pools. And you, sir, we got the first grouping today. You were nominated for the best community builder, I believe, along with some pretty big names.
Yeah, especially after the day I've had today, that was a absolutely fantastic piece of news. If I remember correctly, off the top of my head, it's myself, Kawa, Super Tech God,
and Eggs, and Felicity.
Felicity, right?
I mean, here's the thing. Here's the thing. I don't know if you guys can beat Felicity, because she's creating SnapCon, but
this is true.
I will definitely say you guys are creating really big and good communities, and it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough to see who wins that one, because those are some big names in the community that have been all building the community in their own kind of way. So it's to be completely honest,
I'm incredibly humbled and say, thank you to the people who decided to nominate me for a community builder, whether it's through my own community or through Snap.fan or whatever it may be. I'm more than honored at that. At the same time, I've also been nominated in the same year that Heath Ledger was nominated as the Joker. And I think it's pretty safe to say I am just happy to have gotten a nomination, and we will do what, I will humbly watch at SnapCon, because I will be there, and, enjoy my route. If y'all think that I definitely built the best community, I appreciate the votes when the voting comes on out. I think, was it later this week or next week?
I think so. I think he's going to live. I think he's going to go through all the nominations, potentially, maybe one a day. I don't want to speak for Jolly, but I think he's going through all the nominations, and once those are finished, he's going to put that poll out for everybody to start voting on all the different categories. So
gotcha. So whatever it may be, I appreciate it. So it was a good piece of news today. It was a good way, to brighten my spirits and see that what I'm doing does have, even if it's a minuscule effect on just a couple of creators that said, hey, he's a cool dude, I want to nominate him. I love it. I love it. So who knows, we've got another dozen or so nominations coming on out for more categories as well, from video of the year to creator of the year to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So keep an eye on this Jolly Roger on Twitter, and we'll see what happens. But yes, thank you. Thank you, good sir. That was good to get today.
Absolutely. I know you had some not so good news with the old computer debacle.
Yeah,
So,
that ate up my entire weekend and into this morning.
yeah.
Without going too chaotically into it, because I'm going to be doing a large fundraiser stream now tomorrow on Tuesday to help balance it out. Long story short, the 3-month debacle of trying to get my new custom built computer to Brazil got stopped officially by the federal police and customs as they tried to literally charge me 270% more than what the value of my actual computer was. It was absolutely ridiculous, to say the absolute minimum. So it had to be stopped. And now I have to get another new computer down here in Brazil with super high tariffs. It's just like, oh boy, this has been a 3-month long journey. And, I had a lot of people behind the scenes, including people who work for DHL, going in on the back end to do everything they could to get this moving along and get it here. And it just did not happen. And you know what? Sometimes you have good days and some days you have bad days. And up until about 2 hours ago, it was a bad day. And now I've gotten a good piece of news. We're here talking about Marvel Snap. We're back into the routine. We're not going to riot at DHL. We're just going to move forward. And tomorrow we will start the next chapter as best we can. So let's start this next chapter here of the podcast and move forward a tad.
Yeah, definitely. So,
we mentioned, some fun topics kind of sort of like leaked in a little bit. And I was like, hey, I mean, we had a great event this weekend that happened, and we got to talk about W. We got to talk about the big buzzwords in the community over the weekend, which were locations and bounce. And then, the echo, if you will, that is about to drop on into the game too. So I wanted to kind of dive into that because we saw something that we haven't seen in a little while, and it is really interesting to see. And that's the re-rise of Thanos.
Yeah. And so big shout out there with W Willows, however we say it. Essentially, he's going
Just
by
call him W.
He's going by W now because of nobody truly knows how to say his name outside of the people that hang out with him. So one of the big things I will say before we jump into his deck is the fact that, one of our community members that's here all the time, Cool KG, actually made top 8 of this tournament. So big congrats. He hangs out with us on Wednesday Night Snap a lot, all in both of our channels, things like that. So big congrats on making top 8. That's huge with Battle Arena. So if you guys aren't familiar with Battle Arena, it is one of the bigger tournaments, just like the Snap.fan Opens, where it's all day long on a Saturday. You've got tons of people participating, usually between 80 to 100 people. I don't know the official numbers, didn't check this time around, but it's a pretty big tournament. And W took this down with a Thanos deck. And outside of Lammy, we really haven't seen a lot of Thanos running around. So if we go through the deck real quick, and then we'll throw it back over to Guest. We got Psylocke, Luke Cage. So important to note, there's no 1-drops. We've also got Jeff in there as a 2-drop. We've got Cosmo, Shang-Chi, Iron Lad. We got Blue Marvel, Devil Dino, Professor X, Claw, Spider-Man, and Thanos. So your 1-drops are really your stones coming in from Thanos. You've got some lockout with Professor X, Spider-Man, Jeff package in there. We've got Cosmo. Cosmo's kind of disappeared over the last month. We've talked about that previous podcast, but we got a lot of cards we haven't seen in a little while. Dino coming back in, Iron Lad with no Howard the Duck. What are your thoughts here? Kind of that ongoing Thanos that we've seen kind of on and off, through the last few months or so.
So after, hearing and seeing some of the notes in regards to this deck and how it runs, it's really, really creative because one, this isn't a lockjaw deck. This is not a lockjaw Thanos, trying to spit out the stones to get out the big pieces. This is a play it on your curve control deck. And there's a couple of tactics that they've taken advantage of here. First one is being Psylocke, because Psylocke is not a typical, doesn't make an appearance in Thanos decks very often.
Yeah.
But this one, seeing that there are 5 drops in the deck, The whole goal of it is to be able to play at least a stone or two almost excuse me, every single turn. So
Yeah.
by doing so, by playing Thanos's stones with Psylocke on turn 3, you can then expedite another 5-drop onto turn 4, and locking down Professor X on turn 4 is a huge strategy. Spider-Man, even to secure it a turn early, going Spider-Man into Professor X on turns 4 and 5 is a huge strategy. Whether you're going to go ahead and go off of your curve and just knock out something early, or say you didn't get it and you have your Iron Lad in your hand and you can pull out, you know, what's remaining from there. The whole deck is based on the idea of flying out a 5-drop early via Psylocke, via the Time Stone, via whatever mechanics you can to get that out early so you can maximize that power and lock down your opponent, whether it be through Professor X or Spider-Man. And then just Thanos is, as always, kind of the extra little benefit. But if you do happen to end up on that turn where all your stones pop on out, you can lock it down. You can go ahead and secure, just like armor does, your Power Stone underneath Professor X, and it will not disappear. It's a really solidly built list that is focused on the idea of 5-drop and less. And thinking about how I play, you know, I've played Thanos since day one, where it has either been just rotate out the stones to get out the big pieces, or destroy the stones to get out the other secondary pieces. This is a new version of Ongoing Thanos, in my opinion. Seeing Cosmo built into this, seeing Luke Cage built into this, just to cover your butt the entire way on through. There's a lot of really good things happening in this deck, and I really like it. I'm not gonna lie, in the current meta, this holds up very, very well. As I watch it play on playback today, as I take a look at how it's navigated, thinking of all the combinations of lines of how you're going to use Iron Lad, even if he copies a stone, those stones abilities are incredibly strong. So I really like this deck a lot.
It's definitely a great deck. You know, I've seen similar decks with kind of the blue Marvel to pump up your stones and stuff, but I would say prior to this, you usually had Lockjaw in there. Lockjaw was to kind of cycle this through. You had Spectrum somewhere on your top end of your 6-drops because everything's ongoing. So there's a few cards that, you know, W decided not to put in the deck, and it worked for him. Like, I tried this deck, so after the list came out, I was like, you know what? I'll try it. It's Thanos. You know, we'll see what happens. And honestly, I can't pilot the deck. I can tell you right now, he knows what he's doing with the deck, which is making this deck so good. So when you look at this, you may say like, oh, you know, where's Zabu for your 4-drops? Where's, you know, this card or that card? Where's Howard the Duck, you know, to check to see? Where's Daredevil because you have Professor X and Spider-Man, right? Like, there's all these little nuances that when you look at this deck, you're like, oh, it's missing this card or that card. But I think with the way he specifically plays this deck and understands this deck, you don't necessarily need that. You're not blindly throwing Professor X out. You know what you're doing with Professor X. You know what could be in their hands. So this really is one of those like top tier, you need to be a good pilot. And I'm just throwing it out there because I know a lot of people like to look at the decks we post or like to look at tournament decks and go, oh, this won the tournament, I should play it and I'll hit infinite with it. And just be aware, the deck is good, but the deck is not easy to pilot because of those nuances. And the more you get into it, the better you'll understand the deck. But I can tell you the sleeper in this deck to me is Claw. I think Claw has been popping up in a few decks and has been stealing games where people lock something down or they do whatever, and then all of a sudden Claw's giving that +6 on a lane and you just completely forgot he could do that. And now that you don't have the Doombots being 5 and they're 4s, like it's pretty massive, pretty huge.
Agreed. And I will say I have not gotten a chance to try this yet in Conquest specifically. I've been testing this a little bit in Ladder today. And as a ladder deck, you know, this is a Thanos decks in general on ladder, I feel like are a little bit more difficult than they are in, you know, battle mode, whether it's Conquest or tournaments. They're piloted and thought about in completely different ways because Thanos decks are pretty predictable up to a point. Once you kind of get out to like turn 3, you're like, okay, it's this style of Thanos deck. Got it. So I mean, obviously, if you're on social media, you're probably seeing this deck pop up in some way, shape, or form. So you're probably looking for it in some way, shape, or form. But in Conquest, I'm excited to try this one specifically tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's part of, what I'm doing. I have a contest also going for tomorrow on Twitter for the same reason, because I want to try out some new stuff.
Just be aware. This deck has a 100% counter card coming that we're going to talk about later in the podcast. So like the other side of this is, one of the big things I think this deck shows out is Ongoing has not really been in our meta for the last month, right? Like if you think about the big decks, the bounce decks, the lockjaw decks, like especially with Hulk getting his change, like there's not that many Ongoing cards out there. So we've started to see some of these other cards like Enchantress. Like Enchantress pops up every now and then, but for the most part is only around if like, the location of the week is the Patriot location, right? Like Citadel or something like that. Like it's funny because I do feel like right now, because those cards have disappeared, this deck looks even better. Your Devil Dino, your Darkhawk decks, your other stuff like that, because there's just, people aren't running Rogue. They're not running Enchantress and things like that. So it's just, again, one of those things of be aware as we go into this week, because when we talk about Echo a little bit later, like it could really mess up this deck. It could literally just shut down a lane for you. So it is funny just to see kind of what's in there, and I see in chat over here again, being live here on the podcast, we get the questions, and I'm sure we'll get the questions elsewhere too of, well, what if you don't have XYZ card? And the thing is, I don't think this deck, I don't think you can change it. No. I think if you change a card or two, you're looking at a different Thanos deck. You're looking at a different Professor X Jeff deck. You're looking at a whole different deck if you change anything, because this is unique. I don't think I've seen, even with all the Thanos decks Lamy has played that I've seen him play, I feel like he's had something close, but there's always been a big dramatic change in the mechanic, like Lockjaw being in here, or like, one other card setting the mechanic apart. So
yeah, this is very much meant to be played as a, how can I can picture it in my head of how I want to describe this, of like, it's a control deck with a Thanos sprinkle.
Yeah.
Where each turn you're able to sprinkle the stones in progressively, get that Psylocke out there, get that Shang-Chi out there at the end, get that, these little pieces that add and add and add and add. And you start to undervalue a little bit what the deck actually does. The big play in here is probably, in my opinion, is having that incredible backup card of Iron Lad and seeing what he can drop on down, just in case if you don't get those core mechanics to pop out. Like, you're on turn 5, turn 4, whatever, and you're trying to lock down a lane for the final turn, and Spider-Man and Professor X are still in the deck in a standard Thanos list, you're still rocking at least a 33% chance at that point because of how many stones you draw by the final turn of the game. So I really like that about this deck. One of the biggest commentaries too about it was that Cosmo is a flex position.
Yeah.
That in today's meta, he makes a lot of sense right now. Being able to time that Cosmo if you identify Bounce early, or being able to time that Cosmo if you happen to identify Galactus early, or if right now we're seeing a lot of ramp again because of the Black Panther package that came on out. So people are taking advantage of using that variant again. Like, getting those timings down with Cosmo right now is relevant, but later on he may not be. So this could be a one thing at a time type deck. And to the commentary going on in the chat, listen, every deck is going to have a counter in some potential way, shape, and form. You put an Ongoing deck out there, you're going to say Super Scroll's the counter. You're going to put it on Reveal deck, you're going to say Cosmo's the counter. You're going to put a ramp deck, you're going to say Shang-Chi is the counter. You're going to put a bounce deck, it's just, you're going to play Killmonger as the counter. Every deck has a counter.
Yeah.
This deck, because of the combination being so unique and not seen yet, that's what makes the deck strong right now in the tournament scene, because all decks come down to its pilot. A good pilot can make a bad deck good, but a bad pilot cannot make a good deck good.
Yeah.
So W knows this deck, proved that he knows this deck,
Yeah.
And to be completely honest, he'd probably figure a way how to play around Super Scroll too.
I was gonna say, like, and here's the thing. Super Scroll sounds great, but I mean, how many Super Scrolls have you seen in the last 2 months? Not many, unless it's the location or something like that, you know, driving them out.
Yeah, featured location day only.
Yeah,
That's it. Like, that's when I play my Super Scroll. Same thing.
Yeah, he's not a common card in there. And even with Super Scroll, you better be careful when Professor X comes down, because you're gonna lock down a lane without realizing you locked down a lane.
Yeah.
When he copies Professor X. So yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. There's cards when we look at all of these different things that are gonna take down decks. But W took the deck to the W, got the win there, got his ticket punched to get to the Snap.fan World Championships. So I'm excited because we are building an incredible list of, you know, contestants that are qualified. I mean, literally, it's funny because, again, some people may say streamers aren't the best, you know, deck builders or the best, you know, competitive people or whatever. But if you look at Battle Arena, I mean, we have Lammy, Browd, and now W, all three streamers, all three some of the best, you know, tournament players,
yeah,
you know, along with other people that have made it. I mean, we have some other huge names that have come out of the Snap.fan, the Snap Clash tournaments and everything going to that big tournament. But I mean, that's 3 in a row streamers taking down Battle Arena, because that's the order that they made it in. And man, it's going to be crazy when we get to January just to see the level of talent in that invitational and who's going to walk away with the win there, because there's still a lot of spots, still a lot of ways to get there. But yeah, it's exciting to see, you know, these guys taking down these tournaments with these decks and just the talent that they have.
Agreed, 100%. And you know, it's an interesting topic because, you know, we see some of these competitions at top tier play, right? You see the best of the best that happen to make it to the final, or you see a new face that's made it into the top 8 that we've never seen before do that well. And it brings up a unique conversation that kind of ties into the hot location over the weekend with the Icebox.
Yeah.
Which is revisiting the idea of what locations matter when and where, in what game mode and how, and different features. So I wanted to bring this one up tonight specifically because I saw it repeatedly between the creator group, between Twitter, Threads, several different places. Okay.
Yeah.
And not just creators, like just community members.
Yeah.
Talking about the fact, like, why did we get the Icebox as a featured location? And it brought up an interesting, you know, reminder to me that not all locations are treated the same, right?
Yeah.
So certain locations feel better in certain ways and in certain times. For example, okay, flashback to Plunder Castle. When it first premiered on its very specific, you know, feature location day.
Yeah.
You built a deck to play into Plunder Castle because of how aggressive of an effect it is, and you hope that you have a deck that plays into it for a turn 5-6 combination thing where you could only play 6 cost cards there that actually cost 6.
Right.
So
couldn't use wave, couldn't use anything like that. Yeah, you had to.
Right, you couldn't use wave to get in early because now it's a 4. Like it just it was, you know, a location that forced you to get out of your head of this is how I build a deck. This is the deck that I want to play, because chances are that location has a 50% chance to appear and may tremendously limit what your normal deck could do.
Yeah.
So Icebox comes on down this weekend and people are complaining about it because it's just a meek, annoying, smaller location. And it's one thing when it pops up on ladder, 1 in every 100, you know, chances, and it affects your card, and damn, it's annoying. All right, sure, whatever. Or it pops up into Conquest at a certain point. Oh, okay, sure, that's annoying, whatever. But you move on. And certain locations do better in short appearances, and some locations do better in longer appearances. Icebox should be just a sprinkle in that happens. It's like Olympia. Draw a card. Okay, woohoo. It's an on reveal location, as I call it, and it happens once and then call it a day. But there are other locations that in my opinion should be reserved as exclusively hot locations And some locations that should be, I've talked about it at length here. I don't think certain locations should appear in certain game modes. Many people disagree with me. I'll stand on that hill and die gladly, because we even saw it this past weekend. So I think that there are some very specific things that bring up the idea of what makes a good location. What makes a location a better featured location versus a regular location? What does that? And I think it's interesting as I looked through the list, and this is where I want to bring you into it, is tell me locations that when you saw them in the past, we'll use past experience, for example, you saw a location pop on up as a featured location or a hot location or a premiere or whatever, and you went, okay, this makes me completely rethink about how I deck build for the next X amount of hours. Not thinking about what happens afterwards, but just within that 48,
I got it. I have to stop in a minute, Jolly.
Window. Yeah. So
I have to stop
somewhere in there.
I have to stop you for just a second. Sorry. Breaking news.
Not me.
Yeah. Breaking news. You have another nomination. We have a nomination.
Wait, what?
Yeah. We have a nomination at the SnapCon for the best podcast.
Oh,
show of the year,
baby. We're literally finding this out live.
Yes.
On the podcast.
Here's the thing. I am part of the SnapCon planning committee, all of that, but I'm the tournament guy.
Yeah.
I'm not the awards guy. That's the Jolly Roger out here. So he even surprised Felicity with her nomination, that you're also a part of that one, the community. And so, yeah, it's amazing that we did get nominated. Because there's a lot of really great podcasts out there in the Snap world. So
yeah, I just pulled it up that the Marvel Snap Award nominees for 2023 for the podcast show of the year are Snap Judgments podcast with Pulse Glazer and Roy Rogers, the Snapchat with Cozy Snap and Alexander Kocha, the Snapshot podcast, Brendan APG and KM Best, Dex and Dara podcast, Dexter and Dara JN, and the Snapback podcast with ItsGuestGaming and Default Dan. We're 2 for 2, baby. Well, I am at least, but
it's just you. It's just you.
Oh, that's awesome. That was awesome. That was great to hear. That was great to hear. Like, especially in this moment. Like, I wasn't reading the chat. I apologize because I was.
No, you're good. I know
I was monologuing.
You were focused on those locations.
Well, yeah, I get fixated, but that was really cool. That was really cool. And yes, Jolly Roger, you literally got to see the live reaction. As soon as you said that, I'm like, wait, what? Twitter? Like, holy shit.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
we're super
we
excited.
did it, dude. Yeah, man.
I mean, again,
awesome.
to be considered in that group, I mean, there's some huge names in there, huge podcasts. So whether we win or lose, we are nominated. I feel grateful. And then that means all of you guys listening, whether you're on the podcast listening, you're here in chat live, you're on YouTube later on, wherever, make sure once the votes go up, you know who to pick. It's this guy and that guy. Again, I don't know my left and rights.
Us, just do both hands. Us two. Us two. These two. Yes.
But yeah, so I know we got on that tangent for a little bit because we definitely had to throw that
Good
out
tangent.
there as we learned in chat live. Locations. I mean, like, here's the thing. I would agree with you in a lot of the pieces, right? We won't get into the locations, into the battle mode, conquest, all of that yet. We can touch that in a minute, but I would agree with you when it comes to, and again, appreciate you so much, Jolly Roger, for popping in, hanging out with us, letting us know those things.
Thank you.
When it comes to hot location, I would agree in the fact that there's two aspects of it. One is, it should make you have to build a deck around it. It should be something that's unique, that's different, because it makes ladder feel different for that next 24 hours. Doing something like Xbox, I mean, I guess what the biggest thing you may do is you've made like not play 5 cost cards because you're too worried it's going to mess with your 6 cost cards or something. Like, it's not going to change the deck you're playing. So I don't think it really affects ladder. I will say there's another side of the fence, right? There's the other side of the fence of the people that are like, well, I'm only good with these 2 decks, and these 2 decks do not go well with those locations, so I'm not going to play for 24 hours. I've definitely seen that. There's like when Krakoa was a a featured location. People just said, I'm not playing for that 24 hours because I don't like Krakoa. I'm just losing games from it. So I get that there's some bad locations, but I do feel like it should make you want to play differently, because that's kind of what's supposed to freshen up ladder and it make it not feel like it's the same grind every single day.
Yeah.
For this one specifically, Icebox, I haven't been playing ladder. Not to brag or anything, but I got infinite in the first, day or two.
I got infinite in the first day or two. Yeah.
And then after that,
13,000 collection score.
Yeah. But then, since then I've just been hanging out over in Conquest. And even with that, I've just been playing on and off in Conquest. Like I play a couple matches and then kind of bounce out or whatever. So it's definitely one of those that this particular location, I didn't really get to experience how annoying it was. I mean, I've definitely hit the location a lot. It's just an Iceman, that's coming up as you're going through. But yeah, I would agree with you on the fact that it should be like a specific list that says, here are the 50 locations, 52, whatever. These are one for every week. And, this should be what kind of cycles in and out. I think there's plenty of locations out there that if it was the highlighted location, the featured location, the hot location, whichever it is, you would just kind of go, meh, who cares? Yeah. So.
Yeah. And so I wrote down a few examples because I'm that guy. Okay. So for example, when we had Pet Mansion as the featured location.
Yeah.
Think about it. You have to play your cards here this turn. It's either turns 1, 2, or 3. All of us just kind of went, all right. Like it's not very invasive. That's the proper verbiage there. That one didn't bother me. Tinkerer's Workshop. That's another one where it's like, okay, here's one energy in the first 3 turns of the game.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Like that doesn't make me want to theory craft a deck. That just says, here's the thing. It's like making the bad locations come on and actually seem like a good idea. And I'm not talking like give us District Decks as a feature location again, because, oh my God, I ignored that day.
Yeah.
But like we just had White Hot Room, for example. Okay. That one I loved. I absolutely loved it because it makes you think into offense and defense. It makes you think about, are you a defensive player that's going to keep smacking people out of there? Like turn 3, you're playing Juggernaut, or are you going to storm it? Are you going to block people out right at the very end before they get into it? Like it makes you plan a different style of deck to force you to change it up, because yes, you could get easily stuck in the high evolutionary bounce, world of this is what I know, this is what I play, and that's exclusively it. Like when Warrior Falls came on down, that to me was one of the most complex ones, because now you're constantly thinking 2 turns ahead. You're trying to think about, okay, in this location, if I put this card down, that means this one dies, but I'm thinking they're also going to play this card here, so then I can get away with 1 extra turn before I can play down this other. It was this constant flux of, ooh, let me theory craft here. Yeah. And I really liked that. I like that. To me, that's a fun style of location, and those should be reappearing as featured locations. But when you look at the schedule on Snap.fan, you look at the locations that are coming up. Hellfire Club, where you can't play your 1-cost cards here. This affects bounce exclusively, basically. All right, sure, whatever. Lake Hellas, the new location that's coming in. This to me is almost another Pet Mansion where it says 1-cost cards here have +2 power. So not only is it just a refined area, but it's also a refined cost that happens to play into this location.
So that means
basically everyone just run Killmonger for a day and call. Yeah, exactly. Or an Electra if you want to get snazzy. Like that's it. That's the whole location. Like for this day, go ahead and do this.
Yeah.
That's not.
That's the Patriot Day.
Make me go wow. Yeah, those don't make me go wow.
You make sure that they have priority, and then you Ultron on the last turn and win that location. I mean, like
right.
I mean, I agree with you. I think it's like they're like when you look at Citadel, you look at Carmitage, like it's not just go, okay, Citadel's there, so I'm going to play Iron Man, right? Yes, Iron Man's great there, but like there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do with ongoings. Carmitage, a lot of people go, oh, well, I'm just going to play Shang-Chi, but not Shang-Chi, the Wong. But you go, okay, are you doing White Tiger and Wong? Are you doing Black Panther and Zola Wong? Like, there's different nuances to it. And to your point, there's some of these locations that just don't make you think, don't make you be creative with them. But I'm curious, and I want to open this question. I know this is off. You don't know this question's coming, but when we look at modes, right? Like, I do feel like in some ways, some of these locations really do hurt ladder, because ladder's about grinding, about getting to infinite. And if there's a location, like you mentioned, like, oh, Great Web was there. It was really annoying to play into. It was a really bad location in general. But like, there's some of these different locations that you just go, well, I'm just not playing for 24 hours. Does that really mean that, like, realistically, we should have ladder, which is like a ranked mode, conquest, and then we should have this other mode that's your fun mode? And your fun mode is like every day there's some featured location. Every day there's something that just makes this to where it's a playground. There's no stakes, but maybe if there's no stakes, nobody plays it. I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts there? Should these things just be more of in its own little sandbox somewhere?
I don't think it necessarily needs to be its own little sandbox. My gripe on this, this focused conversation about locations specifically is what makes a featured location. And when you talk about what a featured location is supposed to do, it's supposed to affect ladder to create diversity from your routine and force you to use the entire collection. Not just, can I make my bounce deck now work in Warrior Falls for the next 24 hours? No. Run a different deck. Run a deck that might play into it or play around it. That's what they're supposed to be for, is to be shaking up what you do so it doesn't become monotonous.
Yeah.
And monotonous is kind of the name of the game in a certain way when it comes to conquest, because you want that consistency where it's always going to be random. There is no featured location, and it's certain locations that always appear, and you know that list of locations. But with ladder, specifically with ranked mode, your ranking should be able to flex and adjust because of those big locations. For example, they're talking about it in the chat right now, where Peak was recently a featured location. And so many people in the final week of the season made it to Infinite exclusively because they played into the featured location. And that, in my opinion, that was a huge success for Marvel Snap.
Yeah.
It was frustrating in many ways, but at the same time, the people who realized, oh, this is what I need to do. I need to play a negative style deck into the Peak and then kick ass and take names. Because on ladder, negative decks have a positive cube rate, but a negative win rate. Because if you don't pull it, you run. But when you do pull your combos on ladder, it's 8 cubes at a time.
Yeah.
More or less. You get the idea. So now, here, let's throw in a location 50% of the time that's going to turn everything in your hand around like Mr. Negative would do anyway. Okay, now my win percentage goes up, which means my overall cube rate's going to go up on top of it, which was already good. And that's what worked so well, because people played into the featured location. And there are locations that should do that. I'm not saying every single week we need to have a Project Pegasus style location where everybody gets +5 energy at some random ass point, and then everybody can drop, mega amounts of big cards on turn 2. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, like, the Peak was a perfect example of, hey, you got to build a very specific location. Washington, D.C. is another one where, okay, I'm going to fight you now tooth and nail with multiple no ability cards. I'm going to go ahead and run a Sauron deck. I'm going to throw in Brood. I'm going to throw in this. And I'm going to fight for that location because I know I can win it using X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And that's what a feature location should do. The Icebox did not do that. And it, the second half of that conversation is into, what I've exhausted at length and I won't go into repeatedly because I like my listeners and I don't want them to be bored of that conversation again. But certain locations shouldn't be in Conquest because there is financial input when it comes to playing at the higher levels. So
this would be harder to program, but I would semi-agree with you. I would say if, and again, this comes down to how they program it, I'm fine with ego popping up round 1, round 2, round 3. But to your example, I had ego pop up when I was down to my last 2 cubes. And we were both at our last 2 cubes. And then you're like, okay, let's see how this ends with ego. So I would agree. And ego's kind of a bad example because it's so rare, but it does happen, right? Like, but it is one of those things where I agree with you to an extent, because one of the things that makes Snap unique, and this is not what a lot of people like a lot of people look at Snap as you have 2 extremes. You have the super competitive tournament, you have the non-fun whatever. The mechanics of Snap are locations make this game different than any other game out there. Every game is different, every game you play. So we like that. But when you get to tournaments, there is a level of, and this is kind of where you're getting at, there's a level of comfort you need in your matches. Because if I'm on turn, I'm down to my last 2 cubes, I've already seen location 1 and 2, I'm feeling good about it. I know what they're playing. I've already got the 2 or 3 cards I need to win. And all of a sudden ego pops up, or, Sanctum pops up, or one of these bad locations that I can't interact with, but they have a Doom or they have whatever, and I've already lost the location. That's huge. Yeah. And I'm not saying Sanctum's a problem location. I'm just giving the example that there's some of these matches, and if you were in a tournament, we haven't got to this level yet, but we will. When we get to the $10,000 tournament and somebody loses on round 10 of a battle mode, whatever, because
District X,
District X, ego, whatever pops up, like it's going to get, vision on it. Everybody's going to see it. Everybody's going to talk about it. And again, it'll make for great content. Don't get me wrong. All the clips coming out on Twitch and all of that will be huge, but like that's going to be feel bad if you're the person that just lost 10 grand and instead you got your 1 grand instead of the 10 grand because of that. Or even take it to an extreme, like Magic, when they first released Arena, they had like $100,000 tournament. Like, imagine you're in $100,000 tournament and you lost because of that, right? Like, again, we're not to that point yet. We're at $600 tournaments. Like some of the creator tournaments, I think one of the last creator tournaments had, like Kawa had a big, the creator clash had a big number. It's like $5 grand, right? $5 grand. I mean, that's big money.
Twitch Rivals. Twitch Rivals. So we're getting up into big numbers slowly. I mean, it's something that we're obviously talking about on the back end for the Snap.fan World Championship, but it's something that we are really trying to grow competitively. And the good thing is there is a thirst for it. So if it's going to get to that level of competition to a certain degree, I do think that, when you start promoting money on the line, then a certain amount of control does need to come into effect where, I like your idea of, okay, it doesn't appear in the high stakes rounds. Put it exclusively as that. Certain locations do not appear in the high stakes rounds exclusively. Take out Ego, take out District X, take out, I'm trying to think. There's the World Ship. Yeah, World Ship like was set in the chat too. Ones. Yeah, exactly. Like very specific locations exclusively because of that financial competitive element. Because most others can be navigated around in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. To a certain degree, within those first 3 turns. Even things like Dream Dimension, you can still learn to play around it. But when you lose all agency entirely like that, due to something like Ego or District X, and it affects the entire rest of the battle, not just a turn. then financially speaking, it would be a smarter decision for the future. But
and maybe it's when they start to get into the tournament world, and I know we're going on a huge tangent, so we're gonna start to wrap it up in a minute, but like maybe it's something there when we get to those big tournaments, because again, Second Dinner knows this. Second Dinner knows that this is an esports game. They just haven't got there yet. Right. And maybe that's later in the year. Maybe it's next year. Maybe it's whatever. They know that this can compete with Hearthstone. This can compete with Arena for that esports, TCG game. They're having to make sure they have a solid game first. They're having to make sure that they have the player base first, the card pool first, all of that stuff. So we're getting there, even though everybody wants it to be now. So hopefully it's sooner rather than later. But maybe it's one of those things where when you set up a tournament, there's a way for a tournament creation or something where you can say locations on or off. Like think of GoldenEye, right? Where you're like, let me go put in all my different, configurations for the tournament. Maybe they give us something like that at some point that we can do. Again, I don't see that anywhere near the future, but like hopefully at some point, if they don't want to program that, because, it leads to other questions. Like, can the Reality Stone, Wanda, Scarlet Witch change something into Worldship? Like, there's definitely these kind of follow-up questions when we think of, can the locations appear? When can they appear? How can they appear? As we go through that, but it will definitely become a thing as these tournaments continue to grow. They continue to go when it comes to battle mode, as well as, just like we were talking about. I think in order to keep ladder fun, in order to keep people that even after they've hit Infinite, they want to go back to the ladder scene. It's about these hot locations, these featured locations, and making them fun, not just being a random, like this week, Icebox that doesn't do anything. It doesn't make me want to go to ladder. And once you hit Infinite, unless you're testing a deck, which technically at this point you do in Proving Grounds anyway, you don't really ever go back to the ladder. So, I think that's what they kind of need to do a little bit in that, and think about that with locations.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic, and I want it to be, this conversation to be a beginning of getting more people to talk about it specifically, because I do think that there's an awareness that needs to be made about it in some capacity when it comes to location control. And I'll proactively speak to those who are going to speak against this commentary. Where, as you said in the beginning of it, yes, one of the things that makes Snap is being able to adjust to any situation. I will agree with that 98% of the time.
Yeah.
I am looking at the future. I am looking at exclusively the high-level competition, growth, and longevity of Marvel Snap with where the game is attempting to go, which is super competitive. Esports, adding it in, we know that Second Dinner to a degree is interested in this idea. So how do we get there? These are the types of things that they can implement now in some capacity that will pay off in the future, because as you said, the day is going to come that some big name with a big following does. Imagine if D-Money the other week, who won his competition, won his tournament, earned his seat into the Snap.fan World Championship, right? Imagine if he was in the finals and down to his last 2 cubes got egoed. It would be all over every fucking place, and everybody would be losing their minds going, that's not fair. He was robbed. He should get money. This is, manipulation by Second Dinner, blah, 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 blah. All the trolls would be coming out. I'm trying to get ahead of that, because it's going to happen at some point. There's going to be some stream or some bigger, as I'd like to think I'm a community leader in some way. Let's be honest here. There are many streamers who have much larger followings, and somebody is going to have this similar stance, and then people will hop on the bandwagon and say, you're right. This sucks. This is wrong because so-and-so got knocked out in the finals because of something that was out of his control or her control.
Yeah.
And when that day comes, people will riot, and I'll be sitting back here with my cocktail with an umbrella in it going, I fucking told you so. And I sip gently.
Well, and that's where, like, so papers hanging out in chat saying the same thing, like with some of these bigger streamers. So the example here is Shroud saying the game can't be competitive because it's too random, in the locations and stuff. And you know, the thing is, like, I almost slightly agree with that when it comes to these big tournaments, because, like, I say it every podcast, right? Every podcast I say it. I come from Magic. So when it comes to Magic,
filled your fucking quota. You happy now?
When it comes,
can we have we need a ticker on the video podcast for every time you say Magic, we press a button and it just adds an M in the top corner.
I'll add it.
Thank you, please.
But when it comes to those tournaments, so I'm used to 3-day long tournaments, right? And they're super long. They're 8 to 9 hours day one, another 8 to 9 hours day two. That's if you do good enough on day one, you get to go to day two. And then day three is another, 5 hours or whatever, when you're in the top 16, top 8, whatever you made to get to day three. And when you're doing that, you're bringing a deck of 60 cards. You have sculpted that deck because you can only have the max of 4 copies per card. You have to make sure that you have the perfect mana to spells, to creatures, to everything. And it is absolutely crazy at the amounts of thinking that you put in there. Unless you're just a neck decker, you go on the website, you grab the deck, you go buy it and you play it. But and the thing is that's so different from this game is Snap is made in the fact that they didn't want you to have to worry about that. You have 12 cards. There's no mana, so it's like Hearthstone. You get 1 energy every turn, barring a location or a card giving you more. So it's easy like Hearthstone in that sense. But because the locations give this differential of, all right, this location means your deck is now favored over your opponent's deck, or this location has them favored over you. It changes every single game and how you play compared to these other games. When you sculpt that deck, I'm going to play this card into that card into this card. And with my, percentages, I theoretically should hit one of these 2 combos, one of these 3 combos, and I know how to navigate around it. Within a few cards, I can tell what they're playing, and I can usually tell if they have an answer or not. So, like, it's such a different mechanic when you think of the competitiveness. And, we have other games like DC Dual Force, which feels more like that Hearthstone, Super, whatever, but it's different. It's a different game. It's a different style. They're very hard to compare because Snap is made for the casual card gamer, but it has all of these underlying competitive pieces, and the locations do hurt it in a way of making it the super competitive. But I think that they can take that in Conquest and shift that, and maybe it's even like a tournament mode. I don't know what it is, but like they can shift it just a little bit and it can instantly be super competitive with locations and the randomness and be a good tournament style game. Because I think the other side is it's the entertainment. Like, we all know when we watch it, and then all of a sudden that like when somebody throws down a turn 6 Hail Mary, Reality Stone or Wanda, and all of a sudden it turns into Bar with no name and they won the location. Like, that makes for incredible, clips, television, whatever, stream, whatever. And I think that that's the point of Snap. But it's a hard one. It's so hard to kind of balance that when it comes to competitiveness.
So I'll agree with you to an extent on that also, where the randomness is not necessarily random. It's okay, your deck needs to be able to successfully adapt to a higher percentage of situations, understanding in conjunction with understanding meta relevant archetypes. So it does take research. It doesn't like the deck that W just won with this week.
Yeah.
A month ago, probably wouldn't have been able to get away with it. But right now, Ongoing is doing incredibly well again. People are not running the counters like they were when Enchantress got her adjustments, and Ongoing was absolutely dead.
Yeah.
But he understood that, and he built his deck to play into what would work right now. And clearly it worked. But that's why I say if you remove very specific locations from very specific situations, it's like a less than 1% combination, but it's enough that it will end up having an issue in the future and will become the wall that could prevent breaking into that esports scene, because it is on the horizon. We're all trying to push for it as a community as well. And Second Dinner acknowledges that it exists, even if they're not building it as an infrastructure for their game internally. They're aware of it clearly. I mean, you had the devs at Creator Clash for y'all in New York. So it's not like they don't know that this is going on. There's nothing new there. I mean, frickin' Post Malone knows that this shit's going on. Okay. So everybody knows that this is going on in Marvel Snap to some way, shape, or form. I'm looking at that small percentage exclusively and trying to call it out early before it explodes and causes a bigger problem, because that's just, way I'm looking at it. And to wrap up this on the location side, when it comes to the featured locations, some are better than others. I want to hear from the community, what were your favorite featured locations and why was it the peak?
and then what were the ones that you think should go away? Should never show up as a featured location again.
As a featured location, not locations in general, but just what were the ones that you hated?
I really want to see Ego for 24 hours. Like, I just want Ego to come by for 24 hours, see how many people will actually snap and finish the game on Ego, and then we'll see. We'll just see what happens. But
just run Agatha decks.
Yeah, exactly.
Just the whole weekend, just nothing but solid Agatha. What was it? Agatha after all? No, it was not.
And
it was Ego.
And speaking of good decks out there, especially tournament based decks, Bounce. So we just had all of the new changes, the patch that came out. They touched the high evolutionary decks, which we weren't really sure if they were going to. They kind of had mixed messaging if they were going to touch them yet or not, and they ended up doing that, which was good. They still need a couple more touches to go, but they're on the right track with it. But Bounce was solely missed, but we do also know, and again, if you're already going crazy about this, when they have these changes, it takes a couple weeks to come up with the change, get the change in place, get it through QA, figure it all out, and then release it. So when they think of a change, it's not like I got to fix it tomorrow. If it's a bug, yes, they'll fix it. They know exactly what to target and do. But when it's these changes, there's a lot of things they have to do, balancing, testing, all of that. So Bounce is on the radar. They know it's on the radar. They've already mentioned there's some cards they want to hit and touch. They have not mentioned names of cards, but they've said that there's some things that are on the radar they want to look at. But I'm curious for you guests, Bounce. How do we fix Bounce? And what are some of the cards you think are the problems when it comes to Bounce?
Now, I'll get my obvious one out of the way because I've talked about it to a degree, which is I think that Angela is a problem card at this point because of the current Bounce meta. And it's a simple fix comparatively, but it's not an OTA fix. If you're a longtime listener, you understand what I'm going to say. So I'll say it fast. Angela just needs to switch specifically to the first time a card is played in this lane. Give Angela +2 power. So you can't just kitty bounce. No, not Lockjaw. Not once per turn.
Oh, I got you. That's Lockjaw. Just the card itself.
Like the first time Kitty Pride or any card bounces onto where Angela was, that will then proc, you get every card in the deck has one ticket. And every time they go to Angela, they hand off their ticket to give Angela +2 power. And if they leave and come back, they don't have another ticket to get her another +2 power. You've already been played with Angela. She already took your ticket. She doesn't get any extra power. That, I think, is a very simple, to me, semi-obvious fix.
It's simple on paper,
one of the, well, not programming-wise. I'm saying, looking at what I identify as the problem mechanics of bounce. That's what I think of. I think of, okay, where are they scaling to almost too much power, and why is it happening? One of the reasons is Kitty Pryde bouncing on top of Angela repeatedly. The second one, I know you've talked about at length, and I'll let you spin on it, which is Beast reducing down to 0.
I think to me, so Angela is a problem, but I think when I see games that are runaway games, it's Beast. And again, I think it's Beast needs to go to a minimum of 1. I don't like it. So here's the thing. I'm a bounce player. This is my bounce deck on the screen. I play this deck all the time. It wins all the time. Like there's a couple decks I struggle with, and I'll talk about those in a minute. But for the most part, the reason why it's so crazy is you play Kitty and Iceman, or Kitty and Spider Pig, or whatever, right? Like, or you turn 1 Bast, whatever it is. And I know Bast has been called out by a lot of people too, but I've also seen the math that they're using, and their math is not correct. But Bast is good in this deck because you have a lot of 1s and 0s, and all of a sudden they get +3 for nothing. But anyway, the idea is you kind of play off curve a little bit. You play Angela on 3 with Kitty. Then when you go into 4, you can do, Kitty plus Beast. Or if they don't have a wave, you go ahead and Kitty and something else into the Angela lane. And then on turn 5, you're Kitty and plus Beast. And the problem is it makes it to where, like, where you're talking about bouncing things into Angela, now we're getting 3 extra plays into Angela because we're picking her back up, moving her to a new location with 3 extra bounces she wouldn't have had. She would have had maybe one more to finish it up with the Beast or something like that. So I think that a lot of the times it's this pickup. It's this pickup of Hit Monkey. And again, this change would not affect Hit Monkey whatsoever because he'd go down to 1. But it's the fact that you're picking up, like, Angela, another 1, which is now a 0, Kitty Pryde, which is now a 0. So now for, 1 energy, you're playing 3 cards with your Hit Monkey, plus your Mysterio, plus your whatever. Now your Hit Monkey's massive. So yeah, I do think it's a little bit of a lot of that. And, one of the comments there, I honestly think the biggest problem, and I think is the first change they need to change, and I don't think you agree with me, is the Kitty priority. So it's in the chat, and we talked about this last week too. I think that if you really look at it, and I'll talk about the power level in a minute. If you look at the power level, if you take out Iron Man, the power level of this deck is okay. You can hit big numbers, but without having like Shuri's Lab or something like that, you hit like 20s. You hit 20s in some of the locations, which is beatable with some of your bigger decks. But right. I really think the issue you have is Kitty Pryde. So your turn starting, and for everybody listening on the podcast and in the chat, I'm going to explain the issue. I explained it the other week, but I'm going to explain it again. The issue is turn order. So after I play all my cards, right, I've got my power on the board, and I'm winning the board. I've got 2 locations. I've easily won the board. It goes to start of turn. At start of turn, I am still winning my 2 locations. Then it should have at that point, because it already shows you at the top, it says I have priority. It picks up my Kitty. Now my Kitty, who's an 8 or a 6 or wherever big she is, now shifts, because now I'm not winning that location anymore because Kitty just came back to my hand. And rather than it still knowing that it started turn and I have priority, it gives it over to the opponent. And because of that, it makes it very difficult for somebody to answer Kitty with a Killmonger. It gets very difficult because now when I go into turn 6, they can't use their Shang-Chi because they have the priority because I picked up my Kitty. But if you really think about the fact of how the turn order goes, it starts the turn. Then after turn start, it picks up Kitty. So theoretically, turn has started and I have priority. I should stay and I should keep priority. And I get it. It would be confusing. All of a sudden I pick up Kitty. I'm not winning the locations, but I still have priority. But that is how it should work programmatically. And any other card game, that is how it should work, because I started turn with priority and then I had on turn stuff. And it's so hard to explain that. And I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but if you did that, I guarantee you bounce gets way worse because now they're Shang-Chi's work. Now they're Killmonger's work.
So my only question for confirmation on before I respond to it then is the turn ends before Kitty Pryde, after Kitty Pryde then bounces into your hand.
Yes.
Do the points on the board remain the same, or do the points still adjust?
The points adjust.
Just the
points
priority
adjust
remains
because the priority was already determined at the start of the round.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I just want to get the clarification.
Yeah.
So the reason I'm thinking is for a character like Crossbones, right? Where Crossbones, you need to be winning by a certain number. You need to be winning that location. Now, the definition of Crossbones technically is based off of points. But if the priority, if it's programmed, in the sense of based off of priority, where it says, okay, you were winning this location 7-3, and now you're losing it 7-1. Can you play Crossbones on that location?
No,
because you see what I'm saying. So
I
it's
don't
that
think
kind
you
of programming that you.
Yeah,
I don't think you should be able to either. But I'm just saying that's something that you have to think about systematically too when it comes to winning a location, losing a location, etc. How does it affect more than that? Because if you do have it programmed like that, right? I think the priority play will change how people play bounce, but not to the degree that I think it will nerf it. Because you mentioned this last week, and I had been thinking about it.
I think it's still a good deck. I don't think it kills the deck, but I think it allows other decks to answer it better.
I don't think so. I really don't think so though, because with the way that your current deck is built, for example, with Iron Man in this deck, this specific style of deck of whole bunch of bouncy stuff, Shang-Chi, Iron Man, right? Yep. Some people like Chavez, some people don't. This style of deck, that doesn't get hurt by it at all, because you can play everything into just one lane, turn 5, Iron Man into a blank lane, and then turn 6, make it rain. And it still will survive. And the only thing that people will be changing is where they bounce their kitty, in my opinion. And I don't think that that's going to be a strong enough programmatic piece to immediately solve it all by itself. I think there are certain cards that need to have other changes to them. And one we haven't talked about here that I think will also help to fix some of the issue, which is
hang on. I'll
let you finish and then I'll leave the cliffhanger.
No, that's fine. It's fine. So with Iron Man, I'll tell you in this deck, Iron Man gets played 5% at most. He usually doesn't get played. The only time he really ever gets played is if he gets basted and they like wave or something. He usually comes down on turn 6 with a kitty. He's usually not a turn 5 play because of the fact that you're usually using Beast on turn 5 to pull back as much as you can to get a big turn. The play pattern that you're talking about, which would be like Angela on 2 plus Kitty on 3, or Angela on 3 with Kitty. Turn 4 now has to be your Beast, which means you're only picking up like 2 or 3 cards. So your Iron Man coming down, you actually don't get, unless you've got like your perfect draw, which was like Bast on 1, Kitty plus something like Iceman on 2, or Spider-Ham on 2 or whatever. Like you would have had to like have very perfect your turn 1 and 2 in order to get big damage from playing Iron Man on 5 and skipping like a big pullback on 5. But the difference is like, if you did that, then you're skipping turn 5, not having priority on turn 5 because you're playing Iron Man. Turn 6, you're hoping to like hit monkey into your Iron Man, and your Kitty Pryde's going to be kind of big, but like a 6 maybe somewhere else. And I think it opens you up to lose your other 2 lanes way quicker than not. So it's a weird, like, I get where you're saying with that of doing that, but I think that it changes the way bounce works so much to do that you're going to lose if you're playing it that way. And if you're not playing it that way and you're playing it the normal way, by making it harder to not keep priority, which means you're not playing on 2 locations and you're only playing into 1 location, I think you're going to lose anyway doing that as well with bounce. It's a weird deck, and I played this deck a lot in the last 2 seasons, especially in Conquest, and I feel like you have to go wide because of the way Mysterio works with your cards. You have to do this weird plays, and like it's because I can pull back my priority for turn 6 pretty easily with Kitty and pretty easily with a Beast on 5. It allows me to do crazier things. But if I didn't, even though Beast is not the example, but like by picking up that Kitty Pride and moving the priority, it shifts it so much to where like a Killmonger would be so easy. Like Killmonger destroys this deck if they can't get rid of priority.
Oh yeah. So it's funny you mentioned Mysterio, because he, in my opinion, is actually a card I would like to see changed. I think it is an absolutely fair change, given what Mysterio's mechanic is, where another key core synergy to it would be to change Mysterio from play to other illusions to add to other illusions.
And that makes him too strong.
No, it weakens it. It weakens it tremendously.
There's so many games.
You don't get the amp up on Hitmonkey, you don't get the amp up on Bishop, and you don't get the amp up on Angela.
Maybe.
Probably.
I feel like there's a lot of maybe not, because you're not triggering Bishop, I guess. There's a lot of games to where
you're not triggering Angela.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's not a Doctor Doom though. It's not a mini Doctor Doom, as they're saying in the chat, because it's only the 0 values.
No, they are with Bast. They're 3s.
Exclusive. So again, even with that though, you need that combination to pop off successfully. And I think that the trade-off of what you get by doing that change to Mysterio, of switching him to instead of being play X, Y, and Z, it's add X, Y, and Z. You gain more flexibility for Mysterio outside of bounce, and you decrease his use case in bounce specifically. So you're talking about the mini Doom. If you get the Bast Mysterio combination, that definitely helps in, let's say, a Cerebro 3 deck, where now you're looking at, your Scarlet Witch and, oh, you got locked out. Ah, ha, ha. No, you didn't. Like there are other use cases as an example, because normally the cards that would reach into that other lane by playing another card, whether it's something like an Ultron or something like whatever, there's only a certain amount of them that would have that benefit of having Bast in the deck, because you wouldn't want to nerf an Ultron. You wouldn't want to nerf a Doctor Doom necessarily by getting a Bast to be guaranteed. You know what I mean? So I think the use case changes completely. So if I had to target 3 things personally that would change bounce for the better, I think it's specifically working on Angela's mechanic, Beast not dropping down to 0, and or switching Mysterio from play to illusions to add to illusions. Those are my 3 nominations. Pick and choose from there what you like and don't like. Yeah. But I think that any of those, if not all of those changes, work really well to help control and contract what is currently the best archetype in the game. Bounce, hands down.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I'm thinking of is, because you take that away, and this is specific with Angela, but I'm trying to think of other cards this will work with. You would be able to tell that it is or it isn't the real one, which is the whole point of Mysterio, that you can't tell which one is the fake one. So if I play Mysterio somewhere else and it doesn't trigger Angela, the one in Angela's lane is the fake one. If it does trigger her, the one in Angela is the real one.
But that's my point. That's my point. You're killing the Mysterio synergy because you don't want to play. If you take Mysterio out of the stack, then you're, again, pigeonholing it to something like the what do you call it synergy? The Falcon and Collector synergy. And you're really refining what the deck is. Just like how there are Phoenix Force decks that need to have that be the primary synergy.
I'm saying
Bishop is the same way.
his flavor. But what I'm saying is, and it may only be Angela this would be an issue with. His flavor is you don't know which one's the illusion. And by making that, him plus Angela shows you which one's the fake one. So, yeah. Or shows you which one's potentially the real one or fake one. So, but I get what you're saying with it. There's been what I was getting at until you kind of mentioned it, reminded me, was if he can still play them, there's been plenty of games where if I could just put something over in a location that stopped it because it couldn't be played there, miniaturized lab, whatever. You can't play Mysterio on 5. It doesn't create a copy over there. So, yeah, but again, you're saying it doesn't trigger stuff, so maybe it's not that big of a deal. But I don't know. I still feel like the priority issue is what makes this deck so good. Being able to determine priority is the reason why you win or lose in bounce. Like hands down, 70% or more of my games have all been come down to going into turn 6 who has priority. And if I did not manage priority well enough, I lose that game all the time. And before we kind of jump into the other ones, because I would say as far as the cards go, the only one I think I would really touch would be Beast, to say minimum 1. It will hurt this deck so much, so I kind of don't want to see it, but it is one of the troublesome cards in this deck where you do it. And the only real answer is wave. If you know they're doing it, it happens all the time. I get waved on 5 when I'm doing my Beast play because for some reason the deck had wave and it really shouldn't have wave in it. And then I get destroyed. So it's definitely one of those. But I think if you could fix the priority with Kitty Pryde, I think this deck, just by doing that, this deck gets a lot worse. And one of the decks, if you're having problems with bounce, I just wanted to show this, but if you're having one of the problems with bounce, one of the toughest decks I have right now for my bounce deck specifically, not this specific variation, this is the variation I've been using, but the Nimrod Shuri combination is so hard to beat because you can fill lanes with your Nimrod being at 12 power, because you can eat them with Venom and still have that much power into a lane. Shang-Chi doesn't do anything unless you know how to play Shang-Chi. Like Shang-Chi's really bad against this deck. You really don't have anything. Now, Surfer beats this deck because you just use Shadow King and things like that. There's a lot of cards. Surfer's another deck that's really good, and I didn't have that one pulled up because of Shadow King, because of some of the interactions they can do there as well. So there are decks that can beat bounce. Like, I just want to put it out there. Bounce is not unbeatable, but the two decks that I've been struggling with the most is the Nimrod deck, with mine specifically because I use Shang-Chi. Without that, I don't really have an answer. But if you're playing like the Falcon Beast, like super pickup, like board, you can probably get on top of the Nimrod deck potentially, because you can get stuff a little bit bigger, like the 6 power demons and stuff like that. But just wanted to throw it out there as you guys are kind of doing that, as you're looking at the bounce deck. So
I'm going to hijack you and be completely unnecessarily selfish.
Yeah. You don't like my deck?
No, I just went 3 for 3.
With what?
So for the Marvel Snap Award nominees for 2023.
Oh, you're nominated for something else, huh?
Yeah. I mean, granted, it's a huge list of people, but, you know, I'll take the nomination either way. For Streamer of the Year.
Nice.
I got a nomination on that one, too. That's literally 3 for 3.
Not bad, not bad.
But I'll tell you right now, I have... no, it ain't happening. And I appreciate anyone who even puts a vote towards it. Here's the list of people nominated for Streamer of the Year. Ordinary Harry, KM Best, Eggs, Lammy Series, Cat and Kerr, Binks, Nina is Noob, Felicity, Dexter, Super Tech God, Dara, me, Educated Collins, Malt, TLSG. 15 of us.
Yeah, that one's one of the bigger categories. I think there's 2 categories with 15 nominations.
Yeah. So. Well, hey, I am once again absolutely floored to be even nominated amongst that company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. TLSG.
Yeah.
So
he did so much for this community that the nomination is definitely worthy, because 6 months of literally a deck a day. Yeah, absolutely, he deserves a nomination. Whether even if it's was how do you pronounce, say, posthumous?
Yeah,
posthumous, whatever. It's like not funny, but not, I always forget how to pronounce it properly.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? It's all about the full year. It's not just the last month. So it's awesome to see, and we'll see who ends up taking it. Because again, these votes, the nominations are there, so the votes are going to come from the community over the next couple weeks or week and a half. I don't know how long, but Jolly knows. You guys will vote, and then we'll be announcing at SnapCon Live, and I'm super excited to see who wins each of these categories.
Yeah, me too. It's gonna be SnapCon's gonna be a lot of fun, man.
Yeah,
I cannot wait for SnapCon. Like, I still haven't told my kids. But before we, divert too far, and I went on to my own personal ego shiny moment for a second there. Two things. Number one, this is the deck that you were referring to last week when I put up my deck of the week as a destroy deck, and you're like, well, this is the version I this, for those who were listening to last week's episode.
Well, I changed this
is
week,
that deck.
Yeah.
Okay, because one of the things in here that I love that I was playing after the immediate Galactus adjustment was the Iron Fist Shuri combo into Galactus. That's one of my favorite trios in the game right now.
Yeah.
And call me a Galactus lover all you want, but because I'm not. But if you are going to play Galactus, that's a good way to play Galactus, because it's fun, it's cheeky, it's forecasted just enough because it's just a turn 5-6 play. Like, it's good. It's very, very good. So I like that specific synergy built within this quite a bit. Second thing, you skipped right over Ego, but understandably.
What?
You skipped Ego, Echo, whatever the hell her name is. That
Echo. No, so, this isn't my deck of the week. This isn't your deck of the week. No, this is just This was just a.
I thought you just went right ahead.
No. If you're having problems with bounce, try the Nimrod decks. There's a lot of really cool variants. I think it was Jolly Roger had a variant with Invisible Woman. Literally, he turned to Invisible Woman and sticks like a, one of the destroy cards, whether it's Carnage or Deathstroke or something, or Deathlock underneath there, and then does the whole other combo everywhere else, and then literally at the end of the game you get more destroys. So it's there's a lot of different combos, but if you're struggling with bounce, try it, because like the only decks that are really gonna mess with you maybe are like the Surfer decks if they have Shadow King, but that's still only one lane they can really mess with. So I don't know, give it a shot. This is the one I've been using, but it's definitely like a hodgepodge of a lot of decks, and it's because this is my World Snap Fan deck, so I gotta have the exaggerated super crazy wins rather than being like super perfected deck. So it still wins a lot. It wins a lot, and it's really great, but it's one of those where it's got reasons. It's got reasons. But no, to your point, as we talked about Ongoing and W's decks before, we have Echo. So Echo is the card coming in an hour and a half into Snap, and this week. So I'm curious. We had Jean Grey. Everybody hyped up Jean Grey. She was great while she was bugged. After she was bugged, she was kind of okay. Still okay in certain decks, but like Echo, what are your thoughts on Echo? Do you think she's going to be a super high pickup, or I don't know?
I think a lot of people are going to skip because she's 6K and people opened the spotlights they were hanging on to, and they got Jean Grey because they were like, hey, shiny thing, spotlight, woohoo, Jean Grey, yeah, we've been waiting for this card, awesome. Now I have nothing. All right. So I think a lot of people are going to skip on Echo, which is probably going to backfire for a lot of people, because 6K in tokens to get her is, I think, too much. I think she's a 3K token card, in my opinion. And if you can get her in spotlights, though, I will say, I think she's going to be super fantastic in the tournament scene. Mm-hmm. Not just because W just played an Ongoing. Let me get that out there. Okay. I think that as a control card, to be able to ruin a lane on turn 4 or 5 where your big ongoings are going to pop on down potentially for 1 cost, it's the value on that is ridiculously good. Ridiculously good. But for a very specific niche. I think it's too random for ladder, but incredibly good for conquest and tournaments. So if you're a competitive tournament player, I'd recommend Echo. If you're not, I'd say don't worry. I don't think you're missing much yet.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion on it. I will be getting her. I do have some spotlights left over. I did a lot of opening this weekend. Yep. So I'm like, okay, I've got 5, I think, at the moment right now. So I have enough. So hopefully I'll be able to, pull her on the first one. Cause I don't know about you, but I had to open 3 to get Jean Grey. And that just, that felt bad.
I had 2 to get Jean last time. So it'll probably be 4 this time. But
it's just how it goes. Yeah.
I'm the same. I got 6 stored up. Like I said in chat over here, the next 2, I'm just going to buy with tokens. The next 2 are series 4. So they're going to be 3,000 tokens. I don't know. I've got like 30,000 tokens sitting around. So I don't buy the variants, the ultimate variants, because one, they're at some point going to change those values. And then you're going to feel real bad unless they give us refunds for people who bought them for 5,000. But I don't know. I'm going to buy the tokens on the next 2. This one, I'm torn. I'm going to get her. I think she has some pretty big decks that she's going to be good against. But until those decks start coming back, Darkhawk, Dino, the thing is, if you can predict a Professor X, but it does shut down stuff. So I think that the thing is, she is a weirdly offensive defensive card, because if you think about it, you can't Professor X her lane. So you can go ahead and put her down and understand that.
Yes, you can.
He's ongoing. He'll lose his ongoing ability.
No. Read it again. After your opponent plays an ongoing card,
I'm saying they
remove
cannot.
its abilities.
Right. I'm saying they cannot Professor X you.
I thought you were saying that you can't also Professor X. I'm like, what are you talking about? Yes, you can.
I'm saying they can't Professor X you. So if you think about those types of cards, like Lockdown, if Lockdown becomes everywhere, like it has been on and off, with like High Evolution Lockdown and things like that, like there's certain cards where this is just going to help you and say, you can't do that. My worry, I like that she's a 1 and you can get her down early. My worry is she's a 1. Ghost has the same problem. There's so many ways where, Ghost looks like it's going to be this great tournament card. She's going to do so many good things, but she's a 1. So Killmonger kills her. She's a 1. So she's down for so long because you're not playing her on turn 5 or 6. So she's down for so long unprotected, and they know what you're doing. And I think that's my problem with Echo. Not to say she needs to be higher, because I think if she's like a 3, she never gets played. Even at a 2, she probably won't get played over some of your other cards. So I think she needs to be a 1. I just think she falls into that trap of her getting so many good 1s. Is she better than the other 1s? And we've had this conversation before.
Yeah.
If you're going for power, you have Nebula, you have Kitty, you have Sunspot, right? If you're looking for disruption, you have Iceman, you have Yondu. There's all these cards that are so good for disruption. If you're looking for tech, you have Howard. There's like all these cards that are so good at 1. You have to figure out what it looks like in your deck. And I feel like she's in the Sarah Control style decks.
I agree.
But
your lockdown control style decks. Yeah.
Is she better? I don't know. So I'm definitely getting her. I've got 6 caches saved up, so we'll definitely get her tonight and try her out this week. But my expectations are not super high because we've gotten burned with cards like Ghost. Even Howard plus Iron Lad is insanely good. Howard being able to know what you're getting on turn 6 is super good. But he still doesn't find his way into decks because you still look at it and go, I'd much rather have Nebula. I'd much rather have Sunspot. And I feel like she's just going to be that card where you look at it and go, do I want her or do I want Nebula? And you're probably picking Nebula 85% of the time. So I want to find that other 15%. I want to find the deck that she's perfect for. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with her.
I know. And then that's a big one too, is the trying to proactively block the ongoing counter.
Yeah.
Maybe it's when we start seeing a Jean Grey meta reemerge. Maybe it's a Goose Surfer emerge again. Maybe it's something along those lines. But it's typically when you see this as after your opponent plays, I'm thinking about your turn 4, 5, 6, like that's the kind of
it locks them looking at. It just like, to me, it's like just one of those that just says, in most cases, she's just going to be a card that says, don't play into this lane, right? Like if you look at it, right, you're playing against Darkhawk. She comes down, you're playing against the Darkhawk deck. Okay, guess what's going in that lane? Rockslide, Korg, the cards that matter. But Zabu's going in a different lane on turn 2. It just knows don't play in that lane. Darkhawk's going in a different lane. And if you're trying to predict where they're going to put a Darkhawk, if you hit it, awesome. That's just like predicting a Cosmo, right? Like there's no way to know where they're going to put it unless they're limited to one particular location. Like it's kind of where I look at with a Cosmo type card. Cosmo's good when you know what they're doing. They played Wong. Great. Playing Cosmo right on top of your Wong. But like this one works so differently because she has to be down first. And in order to remove that. And so I think she's good. But I don't know.
Yeah, when Wong specifically becomes Wong decks in general become a huge issue again, putting Echo down in one lane and then Cosmo in another to lock down 2 lanes. I mean, that's a pretty substantial combo. But I'm sitting here looking at my game and I'm looking at all of the ongoings that are basically 4 cost and higher. I feel like those are going to be the ones that get a much bigger, have a much bigger effect. And I'm looking at, as we've already called out, Wong and Darkhawk and Devil Dino. You don't want to cancel out that Red Skull. Tell you that confidently. You definitely don't want that. But
yeah, that's what I was thinking. If she's everywhere, I'm just playing Shuri. Like, sure, I'll play right into the Echo. Like, but no problem. But
again, this is what feeds for me the idea that she's great in a tournament setting specifically, not in ladder.
I think if we had, and we will never have this, I mean, the devs have pretty much even said they don't want to really look at this, but if we had sideboards, the problem is our decks are only 12 cards. So if you have a 4-card sideboard, it means you can literally change your deck into a different deck. But if we had sideboards, she seems like, in a game like that, she seems like a great sideboard card. She's not quite there to make it in your main deck, but she's a good sideboard, which means most 12-card decks have like one, we call it a flex spot, but that's kind of your sideboard spot. You have that one flex spot. And so the question always becomes, is she your better flex spot? Or your typical flex spots are Cosmo, Shang-Chi. It's those types of cards. And the question is she better than those cards? I don't know. I don't know if she is. Until she finds a deck, until she finds her deck. And I think you're kind of starting to hit it on the nail on the head a little bit. She's in that Echo plus Cosmo deck. She's in that Sarah Surfer deck. She's in that, I've got a bunch of answers and I just hope I can slightly go on top of you with this one card, right? Like with this Darkhawk or whatever, like I hope I can beat you with that because everything else is just an answer on the board. And I hope I draw the right answers at the right time. So I think that's going to be her home. And the question is Sarah Surfer good enough right now? Because there's so many good decks that can go way taller than Sarah Surfer right now.
Mm-hmm. No, I'll agree with you there. I think she's going to be, if I had to make a prediction, ongoing Lockjaw Thanos. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
We shall see, though. We shall see. But what deck, because I couldn't forecast that as much as I want, but I want to know, especially given everything that's happened over the last few days, what is your deck of the week? What are you bringing to the table? Is it something along the lines of what's meta fun, relevant, or
fun.
is it,
It's just
are you looking to spice it up for us?
Here's the thing. When it comes to decks, you either go one of two ways. And I could sit here all day long and say, hey, you saw my Piggy Kitty deck, right? Like the bounce deck.
Right.
You saw my Nimrod deck. Those are competitive decks. But I like to do fun decks because there's too many people out there putting out, this will get you to infinite. I just want to have fun at this point. Before I show it, I will say one other thing that I've loved. So Jolly came in here a little bit earlier. He put out his like thoughts around Echo and the deck he wanted to play with. And what he wants to do is turn 1 Echo, turn 2 Viper to give them Echo, and then just play Shuri. So play your Red Skull into the Echo now that they have on their side of the board. So I thought that was kind of funny just in how he's kind of doing that so that he can get rid of his stuff. And I don't know if it's good because, it's like you already have Sauron on the deck to do it. But
I was about to say, for the same 3 power, you could just...
But you lose 2 of the power, so because you throw it back on the other side. So I don't know. But I thought it was like interesting and fun. If she was double-sided, she would 1000% go into a Red Skull deck. But since she's only one-sided, you have to give them to the opponent. So I don't know. I just thought that was kind of like funny. Like that'd be cute. That'd be a cute Binks video. Because he always loves to do like crazy throw stuff over a Viper. If you guys haven't seen it, he had like a Destroyer plus Odin throw it over the fence.
So good
combo that was funny. So
it was he did a couple of them like that where he had to play Viper and then Ramp, followed by Destroyer and then Odin. And then the 50-50 would have to land that the Viper would send over the Destroyer. And because it procced with Odin, then it goes off on the other side of the battlefield. Like, absolutely crazy combination. But man, that was fun. I've seen that one and the Galactus one similarly.
Yeah. So, and now it'd be harder to do a Galactus. But yeah, so my fun deck, this is the one, I call it the Ben Brode Special. I've been playing with it. I've been tweaking it. I've been tweaking it a little bit here and there. I'm about to start playing around with Living Tribunal in here as well. But for you guys listening, we've got Nebula, Howard the Duck, Psylocke, Zabu, Invisible Woman, Mystique, Super Skrull, Omega Red, Stegron, Iron Lad, Iron Man, and Onslaught. I know it's a bunch of cards, but here's the combo here. The combo that you're wanting to get done is you want to get your Zabu out early. You want to get Howard the Duck on 1, Zabu on 2. That way you can start doing like Omega Red, and or now with Howard the Duck, you can look for your Iron Lad to maybe copy this. But the idea is you want to get Omega Red, Iron Man, Onslaught all in the same location. That way, theoretically, you should win that location pretty easily. And Omega Red is now going to give you 8 at the other location. So that's where your Howard the Duck on a lane will give you 10 over there or something like that. With your Zabu, you can get 13. You can get some really crazy combinations with things like Zabu or Psylocke to get like Mystique even out there. You can potentially do things like Iron Lad on 4 to copy an Onslaught that's coming up. And then next turn, Mystique, your Iron Lad. So you got another Onslaught. Like there's crazy combos in here. Like I said, it's a 50-50 deck. I think my win rate's about 50%. Cube rate is about like just even. It's not great here or there, but it's a fun deck. There's a lot of extra pieces in here. You can hide everything behind Invisible Woman if you want. So Invisible Woman, Omega Red, Iron Man, Onslaught. You could even tweak this a little bit. So the one I'm starting to play with and mess around with is actually tweaking it to give Electro. So you Invisible Woman, Electro on a different location, get your extra energy. Then you can start stacking your bigger cards. So then you can go, an Iron Man early, Onslaught. And this is where I want to look at Living Tribunal being pulled in here. Because then you get like ridiculous power on one of your locations or your Tribunal, showing it out. So I think there's some other pieces that can come in and out of the deck. I'm just starting to experiment with it. But the core, Omega Red, Iron Man, Onslaught, giving you that win. There's a lot of games where they're not even expecting it, especially when it's behind Invisible Woman, and all of a sudden you win because of the Onslaught. So it's fun. Spider Ham is what you don't want to see. He hits a lot of stuff. Echo's going to destroy this deck. And, you know,
yeah,
pretty much there's a, you know, like Enchantress isn't too bad because usually if you're stacking behind an Invisible Woman, it just takes hers and not the rest. So there's a couple little pieces in here. It's a fun deck. It's not going to get you to infinite probably, unless we get like Citadel as a location or something, and then you just have to stack behind Invisible Woman for the Enchantress move. But I don't know. It's been fun. It's been fun.
I'll give it a whirl, if you will. Give it a whirl.
Yeah, and I think like, Super Scroll isn't needed. Like, he's in there just because I kept getting like, I think the week I was playing it hardest was maybe where you had to play Patriot or something dumb, and I was like, I'm just gonna throw Super Scroll in here. But yeah.
Anything that allows me to play Invisible Woman followed by Stegron in the same lane.
Oh my gosh. Stegron is another one of those sleeper cards where, like, if you're not behind Invisible Woman and they see you're a Mega Red, they start to stack in that lane so your Mega Red won't go off. And then you're just like, oh yeah, by the way, boom. Especially like there was a game with Mojo World. And so I had like a Mega Red and all that nice. Stacked.
Yeah.
And I was like, yep, here's a Stegron. Kick your stuff over. I've definitely won that lane now. And won that. So it's fun. It's fun. I need a few more Dan Hips to finish up the deck as Dan Hips, but
I must say though, unfortunately, to take out that Super Scroll and make it the true Ben Brode special, you need to play Debris.
Yeah, it's probably true.
You have to have Debris. If you're gonna make it a Ben Brode deck, it has to have rocks. That is unquestionable, a non-negotiable. Get in Debris, and then sure, we'll talk. You know, and that actually might kind of work oddly enough in this deck too.
Yeah,
but either way, good sir, we have exhausted the podcast timeline. We have gone through W's awesome Thanos deck from the past weekend in Battle Arena, all of the location conversation, how do you fix bounce, Echo, and the Ben Brode special. So I know I'm going to be testing out all day tomorrow. I'm going to finally, because, you know, I'm trying a new tactic this month versus last month. I'm finally, for the first time all month, I will be touching Conquest tomorrow. I have literally not touched Conquest the entire month. So we have a lot of fun decks. I have a contest going on Twitter right now. I have to try it.
It's
so
miserable.
You know what? Yeah, bring it on though. Bring it on. You know, it's gonna be a long day, long stream. Hopefully you come on down and kind of, you know, sit with us for a little while and see what we're doing during the daytime while you're doing your big boy job, you know, and I'm sitting here doing my big boy games, you know, whatever. So, but I appreciate it as always, good sir. So let them know, who are you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So Default Dan here. If you guys want to check us out, like all these lovely people over here in chat, if you want to check us out live, Mondays we stream the podcast live over here at twitch.tv/defaultdan. If you want to hang out with us on Wednesdays, you can, but we're over at the Snap.fan Twitch channel. So we do Wednesday night Snap over there. We're usually hanging out. Occasionally we get other casters in and out like Matrim and Offbeat and, you know, Super Tech God and some of those guys coming in and out to do some games. So if you like to play more competitive, like we've been talking about, 4 rounds on Wednesdays, hang out with us over there. And outside of that, you know, I've got the YouTube. We're slowly going to be potentially doing some videos pretty soon over there. Kind of lacking over there, but you can hang out youtube.com/defaultdan over there as well. And yeah, that's about it. I guess at the end of the month, you can also hang out with the Snap.fan for the big open. So if you are in the tournament space, like the W deck that we were talking about, and you want to test out that kind of stuff, $600 are on the line for the end of the month to try to win that tournament, the Snap.fan open. So if you want to check out more of that, definitely go over to the Snap.fan website. Lots of information over there, along with a lot of our tournament stuff coming out pretty soon.
This is true. This is very true. And if you want to come hang out with me, for those who do not know, my name is Guest, also known as ItsGuestGaming, now 3-time nominee for, no, I'm kidding. But I will say one other thing. If you want to come hang out with us in person, just like you were talking about, come to SnapCon. So check it out. Go to the website, get your ticket. We're down here in Tampa. Guest is coming up from Brazil. We're going to be there live. So come hang out with us, talk to us as hopefully,
who knows? Maybe we'll take home the podcast award. Maybe not. Maybe guest to win one of his other multiple awards he keeps getting nominated for. We'll see. But definitely come over there. We got the tournament going on during that. But SnapCon, check it out next month.
Yes,
Sorry.
Yes, absolutely. No, it's fine. You could just run over my damn outro. That's fine. Do whatever you got to do. But if it means everybody gets to come together and hang out with us in Tampa, that's totally cool. If you can't hang out with us there, you can hang out with me over at twitch.tv/ItsGuestGaming. You can find me on YouTube, Threads, Twitter, Instagram. I mean, technically TikTok, but I haven't been doing YouTube shorts lately because they're next to impossible to produce with what I want to do with them, because I'm just too much of a perfectionist with not enough time. So eventually, once I have my new computer, it'll be a lot easier. So looking forward to what the future has to bring. Absolutely. Default Dan, good sir, thank you so much once again for an absolute fantastic episode of the Snapback podcast, where you snap and we snap back. Default Dan, say goodbye to all the lovely people.
Y'all take it easy, guys.
All right. No. I see you reaching for the mouse. I
haven't moved it. I'm going to the chat. I'm going to the chat.
Okay.
Gritty.
Okay. I was about to say, talk with the chat. That's fine. Clicking the end record button. No, but we're doing good. But for real though, seriously, like that week of SnapCon, just as a sidebar for the outro, finally 3 years later, I get to have a beer with you, dude.
Yeah, I know, man. We've been doing this stuff between different games and everything forever. So it's gonna be fun.
I know.